Welcome everyone to another session of Answer Writing Program by Vajiram and Ravi. In this session, we are going to discuss 2 questions from GS3 Environment and 1 question from Current Affair. The syllabus for environment is Conservation, Environmental Pollution and Degradation, Environmental Impact Assessment. So we will be looking at questions from these dimensions. Let us see the questions. The very first question is about marine pollution. We have been witnessing recurring current affairs as well as certain news which are related to marine pollution, and we also have understood there are certain conventions like London Convention of 1972 which have prescribed certain measures. So our question will look around the dimensions of the same. Question number 2 is about environmental impact assessment. It was established and it had certain successes as well as certain shortcomings. We'll be looking at the same in the question. And the last question is a current affair based question on terrorism. We have witnessing a lot of terrorist related activities around the globe. We recently are witnessing the Hamas attack on Israel, as well as we have witnessed certain other dimensions of terrorism around the globe, and we'll be focusing specifically on India, and we'll be talking about the challenges about the same for India. So let us start with question number 1. Discuss the problem of marine pollution, emphasizing its effects. Also explain mitigation measures as prescribed under the London Convention of 1972. Now it's a 10-marker question, so we will be dividing the same in introduction, 2 body parts. First we'll talk about the effects. In the second body part, we'll talk about the measures as prescribed under the London Convention. And then in the conclusion, we will talk about how exactly the issue must be resolved. In the introduction, you have the opportunity to either talk about the definition of marine pollution, or talk about the causes of marine pollution, or talk about the objective of London Convention. In the definition, you can talk about marine pollution refers to spreading of toxic waste material or substances or chemicals that harms the entire marine ecosystem. For the causes, you can either create a small mind map in your answer where you can enlist all the causes such as shipping, oil spill, agricultural runoff, plastic pollution, waste disposal and coastal development. So all this you can also imbibe in your introduction through a mind map. You can also talk about the objective of London Convention of 1972, where there are specific measures with respect to mitigation of marine pollution. Now let's see the very first body, which is the effects of marine pollution. You can enlist 4 to 5 points, expand them in 3 lines with certain examples. The very first is harm to marine life. We have witnessed how due to pollution related issues, marine life also gets affected because of pollution. We are witnessing coral bleaching, etc. These are the examples that you can add in your answer. The second is damage to the ecosystem. Because of chemical runoff, agricultural waste, other waste, etc., we are witnessing algal blooms, and because of that, the entire ecosystem suffers. The local ecosystem, the aquatic ecosystem, as well as the terrestrial ecosystem also suffers because of the same. Third is depletion of oxygen in seawater. Because of phenomena like algal bloom, we have seen augmented biological oxygen demand that impacts the aquatic system entirely. All the marine creatures, they face a lot of issue with respect to oxygen, and that's because of the pollution. Fourth is threat to human health. As we understand the biomagnification process, if the marine population, marine ecosystem is going to get affected, the same amount is also going to be reflected with respect to human health. We have to understand the idea of one health about the same for this context. Fifth is economic impact. As aquatic life is going to be impacted, the economic activities related to marine pollution is also going to be impacted. So that's for economic impact. Now, the body 2, you talk about the London Convention and what are the mitigations regarding marine pollution in this body. First, you talk about there's either prohibition or regulation of certain substances, prohibition of dumping waste, toxic material, and regulation with respect to certain kind of limit or cap on dumping of certain materials. Second is coordination between parties to the convention. Now such kind of coordination, synergy is required when we are talking about a global issue. Synergy refers to different parties where they agree and understand what is the cap and what kind of material they must ensure are not dumped in marine places. The third is monitoring of dumping activities to ensure there is transparency and as well as there is accountability over there. Fourth is international cooperation and research and development. Now, research and development is a crucial factor over here through which they can understand not just how to monitor the waste disposal, but also understand how to ensure whatever conservation issues are there, whatever reclamation issues are there. So that is for research and development. So London Convention encompasses all this to ensure marine pollution is tackled. Lastly, in the conclusion, you have the opportunity to talk about the SDG, how SDG 14 talks about life below water, and there are certain goals in SDG, like SDG 14.1 talks about how by 2030 we have to eliminate different causes with respect to marine pollution. So that is something you can add in the conclusion. So this is for answer number 1. Let us see the model answer and understand how can we imbibe the same in our answer writing practice. Firstly, you can either define the marine pollution issue, and you can also talk about the London Convention. You can also add the mind map about causes to give a very holistic idea. In the body 1, you talk about the effects and you give certain examples to substantiate your argument. In the body 2, again, you list down all the measures as envisioned in London Convention of 1972, and in the conclusion, you talk about how it's significant threat and there must be certain kind of coordination to prevent further damage of marine life. So that is for question number 1. Let's move to question number 2. Do you think that even after years of implementation, the result of environmental impact assessment has not been encouraging? Critically examine. Now you have to focus on the directive which is critically examine. It refers to the fact that we will have to see the entire demand of the question in 2 ways. You either agree as well as you understand that there is possibility of opposite as well. So if you understand this question talks about this, that environmental impact assessment has not been encouraging the result of the same. At the same time, you can also talk about the successes. So you have to build a narrative, and narrative will encompass introduction where you will define the EIA, or you can talk about the objective, or you can talk about the evolution of EIA. Then you can talk about the successes of EIA in body 1, and then you can talk about the shortcomings, and you can conclude your answer with certain measures. The very first is definition of EIA. EIA refers to a process through which environmental impact of any project are assessed to ensure no further damage is done, or to ensure there are certain mitigations to tackle any kind of destruction. So that is environmental impact assessment. Objective, you can either create a mind map like this in your answer along with the introduction, or you can either write in points. To promote environment friendly and long-term growth, to render detail on the environmental impact, identification of options and mitigation measures, and to predict and evaluate social effects of growth related activities. So these are the objectives of EIA. You can also talk about the evolution of EIA. You can talk about in how 1986 we had Environmental Protection Act, and based on that in 1994 the very first environmental clearance was given, and this started the entire chain of EIA. So that is something that you can write in your introduction. Let's move to the body 1 where we'll talk about the successes of environmental impact assessment. The very first is it highlights the concern. Well, it specifically talks about issues which can come across if certain measures are not taken. We have seen that how the river linking of Ken Betwa, there were lots of issues which were highlighted through the process of EIA. Second is detailed assessment. This helps us understand what kind of possibilities are there with respect to destruction of the environment. We have witnessed through certain examples like the bridge that was planned with respect to Pulicat Lake, and the environmental impact assessment gave us a detailed idea that what exactly are the impacts, what are the future prospects of the project. Third is people participation. Now this is very crucial. At the end, the entire ecosystem where people are going to live, their livelihood, their social activities are going to be dependent on the ecosystem. If that ecosystem has certain kind of hindrance through any kind of project, people must be well aware, as well as they must have certain voice. So EIA has certain processes through which people can participate and raise their concern. And last is mitigation measures. Now there were many projects for which EIA gave alternatives and gave mitigation measures. So we have seen how with respect to planning of Konkan Railway, there were certain mitigation measures that helped the entire environmental impact assessment program. So that is something you can write in the successes of EIA. Now you can talk about in the shortcomings various points. You have the option to choose few of them, but I'll enlist all the points. Weak enforcement and monitoring, as EIA does not have a specific or special cadre with respect to enforcement of the entire program. We have witnessed weak enforcement and monitoring of the same. Also, there is inadequate expertise in EIA. It's a fairly new concept. Also, we do not have much promotion with respect to the academics of the EIA, and that definitely impacts the expertise of the human resource. Post-approval impact assessment. Now, environmental impact assessment must have certain kind of cycle through which they can understand whatever impact assessment was done before and how can they go ahead and understand from the future prospects. So, post-approval impact assessment is not done, and that definitely impacts the cycle of environmental protection and conservation. Fourth is exemption from EIA. Now government has came up with lot of exemption that definitely dilutes the purpose of EIA. Fourth is lack of credibility in EIA. We also have to understand by clubbing different points like adequate expertise, weak enforcement, credibility of EIA also gets impacted because lack of expertise along with a lot of political intervention as well as post-approval impact assessment. So all these points can give you the idea that credibility of EIA is also in doubt. Sixth is confidential environmental management plans. Now, there was a concept with respect to people's participation, but there are certain environmental management plan which are not transparent, which are not out there in public, and that definitely hinders the entire EIA process. Delayed public participation. This is again a big hurdle. The public participation process comes towards the end. That definitely dilutes the idea of EIA. And last is lengthy and technical EIA process. This definitely alienates most of the participation process. So this is something that you can write in the shortcoming. Let us see what we can write in the conclusion. In the conclusion, you can talk about how EIA must be strengthened. There should be element of transparency as well as accountability to ensure that environmental conservation is the primary goal, and development debate is also there, but there should be balance for the same. So that is something that you can write in question number 2. Let us see the model answer and understand how can we inculcate the same in our answer writing practice. In the introduction, you can talk about the definition is process of evaluating the likely environmental impact of a proposed project, taking account of different dimensions like socio-economic, cultural and human related impact. You can talk about the evolution, that how EPA, the 1986 Act, gave mandate in 1994 about environmental clearance. So this is something you can write in the introduction. Then you can talk about the successes. You can highlight different points. It's really ideal to give certain examples to substantiate your argument. So that is there. You can talk about different examples. Again, in the shortcoming, you have the option to ensure you give good amount of examples and thus give a very holistic picture of the answer. And in the end, you can talk about the way forward, how the shortcomings must be overcome, and whatever the future prospect of EIA is must be taken in a holistic and inclusive way. So that is something for question number 2. Let's move to the question number 3, which is current affair based question. Terrorism is a global challenge that can only be defeated through unity, resilience and commitment to peace. In light of the statement, mention reasons for spread of terrorism in India and methods through which it can be curbed. Now, we have recurringly witnessed news related to terrorism, either Hamas and Israel conflict, or you can talk about how there are certain nations which are promoting terrorism or giving certain kind of justification. We also have neighborhood issues. So terrorism in India is a big issue. We can define the terrorism in the introduction. You can talk about how it's a terror-related activity based on violence, threatening the civilians as well as the state. You can talk about the recent news, or you can talk about the global terrorism index, that how India ranks 13 on the same. That refers that it is the worst affected, one of the worst affected in the top 25 countries, and thus you can write the introduction in different kind of fashions. In the body 1, you can talk about the reasons for the spread of terrorism in India. Over here, you can enlist different factors and give certain examples. Like very first is religion and communal tension. We have witnessed multiple communal tension in India, either Gujarat riots or Bombay blast, and because of the same, we have seen communal hatred, and that have led to terrorist activities. Second is ethnic and separatist movement. We have multiple insurgent or terrorist activities within the India. We have seen issues of the same in Kashmir. We have also seen Khalistani movement, etc. We also have insurgency in northeast. So that can also augment the terrorist activities in India. Third is radicalization and recruitment. We have witnessed that how ISIS have been using social media to radicalize youth, and thus that leads to terrorist activities. Fourth is geopolitical factors. We have two surrounding neighbors, Pakistan and China, which have created a lot of hurdles with respect to tackling terrorism, and thus we also have them as factors. And last is proximity to conflict zone like Afghanistan, Pakistan, etc. Right? So all these factors also leads to terrorist activities in India. Let's see the methods to curb terrorism in India. The very first is strengthening intelligence agencies. We have RAW and different IB, different other institutions to tackle the terrorist activity. Now we must ensure that they are given required amount of training, resources, etc. to ensure terrorist related activities do not happen in India. The second is legislative measures against terrorism. You have certain legislative frameworks, acts through which terrorism have been tackled in legal way, so they must be strengthened and must be updated regularly to ensure the dynamic nature of terrorist activities in India is also inculcated. Third is cyber security initiative. We have multiple cyber security initiative like India 4C, which monitors and understands the nature of cyber crime and the linkages with terrorist activities. Fourth is financial counter-terrorism measures. We have Financial Intelligence Unit, which tackles the financial aspect of the terrorism. And last is border security and coastal defense. We witnessed Mumbai blast, and that was basically failure of coastal defense. So this kind of issues must be strengthened, border security and coastal defense, to ensure we curb the terrorism in India. So this is something you can write in the second body. In the conclusion, you have the opportunity to talk about how there is need for international cooperation. You can talk about institutions like United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, Financial Action Task Force. You can also talk about certain drafts that have been in place like Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism. And you can also talk about regional groupings like SCO. SCO through RATS is also focused on tackling terrorism in the region, limited region part. So these are the points that you can write in your conclusion. Now let's see the model answer and understand how can we write the answer from the same. In the first, you can talk about the definition, you can talk about the Global Terrorism Index, and you can also talk about the recent current affair. In the body 2, which is the reason, you can enlist different points with example, so to substantiate your answers. In the methods, again, you can enlist different points and give different kind of proof points and examples to substantiate your argument. And last, you can talk about the way forward and thus conclude your answer. So this is question number 3. This is answer writing program of Vajiram and Ravi, where you are writing answers for 5 days a week, 2 questions on static, 1 questions on current affair, and it will be encompassing GS 1, 2, 3, 4. You can check out the questions every day which are uploaded on Mains Daily Questions of vajiramis.com, and you can see this video along with the model answer which are attached in the description on YouTube channel. You can just go to vajiramis.com, go to Mains Daily Answer. You can also see the schedule over here. Over here, you can go to the respective month, see the questions and upload your answer for the same. You will be able to see the model answer in the evening along with the video so that you can understand how to frame your answers better. So keep writing. Thank you so much.